This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, everybody. Shalom, shalom. Welcome, welcome. As you know, we're not scheduled to have Lunch and Learn next week, as please God, I will be in Israel as part of an OU mission of rabbis and lay leaders. Adam Teicher will be accompanying me, and we're going to be visiting communities in the south, in the north, in the Gush Etzion area. The plan is to visit people in hospitals, soldier, army bases, and also families that have been deeply, 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 deeply affected by this horror, and to connect each rabbi and his community to a number of specific families that we can maintain that connection afterwards and be a source of emotional and all types of support, whatever it might be, for those families, whether it's children being in touch with our children here, the adults with the adults, whatever it is, to try to let everybody know that we are Am Echad. We are one people and we will stand with one another. They are bearing the brunt. That goes without saying, but we are doing whatever it is that we can do. I'm scheduled to leave on Sunday and be back Friday early afternoon, LAX. Hopefully not too much traffic, and get onto the road right away and make it back here. Okay, so today's topic I thought would be very, very apt to discuss, as the title says, the spiritual qualities of the land of Israel. What is it that we are fighting for? What is it that touches the heart of every Jew, no matter where they might be, no matter how physically far they might be from the land of Israel, how that is, as I've been saying, our beating heart. You know, it's amazing. We had we're having a bar mitzvah this Shabbos, and the family had this morning. He read from the Torah, right? And the boy's father's family is from Denmark, right? And it's so interesting. We're sitting there, and they're talking Dutch as we're amongst themselves, and it's amazing that as different as so many Jews are, Am Echad. We are all one people. We get together, we all pray the same manner, and Israel is that central part of who and what we are all about. Rav Dessler, in source number 1, writes in his Michtav Me Eliyahu, is Rav Eliyahu Dessler. Michtav means a letter. So these are the writings from Eliyahu, Michtav Me Eliyahu. And he writes, I'll go right to the English. Well, it's hard. The Hebrew is so beautiful. Ma niflahu. How amazing is it? How wondrous is this? Ze alpayim shana shegalina me'artzeinu. 2,000 years that we are exiled from our land. Ve'ech nishara avata v'libeinu. So how is it that the love for the land has remained so strongly in our hearts for 2,000 years? Yan ki ein zu etzleinu le'umiyut. He writes, this is not because this is a nationhood. The land of Israel does not represent a center of our nationhood, kamo eight salamim, like it does like other nations. Because if that were the case, then it would have been forgotten from our hearts. Like other nations that have been exiled from their land for thousands of years, they no longer exist. I mentioned to you something that Rabbi Chaim Jachter, had, I don't know if he mentioned when he was here or he has it in his book, that he went to the museum with his daughter, And the museum had all of these displays on ancient civilizations. And one of the ancient civilizations was Judaism. And they remarked that of all the ancient civilizations being studied and being presented at the museum, we are the only one that is on the outside looking at the exhibits, as opposed to long dead inside of the exhibits and being looked at by others. Rather, the love for the land is rooted in holiness. The holiness of this land in which God is readily found is the same holiness. Oto akadusha devuka banu. That's the same holiness that is found inside of us. Ki yerusha hi b'nafshenu. It is an inheritance in our souls. It is a spiritual DNA. Me'avinu Avraham. It is a spiritual DNA. That makes extra over there also. We're on the tables also. Look. Right? If everyone has great. It's a spiritual DNA. Sorry. It's a spiritual DNA that we got from Avraham. You know, it's fascinating. They've done DNA studies on Kohanim. And they found, and they're able to track certain DNA trackers that are only passed down patrilineally from the father, because kahuna is passed from the father to son, father to son. If a daughter is born to Kohanim, her offspring, if she's not married to a Kohen, will not be Kohanim. Now, of course, that DNA will not allow us to say this person is a Kohen, because a person might have that patrilineal DNA from a Kohen, but if their father or grandfather or great-great-grandfather all the way up married a divorcee, then the children born from that union will not be Kohanim. So it's not simply the DNA, but we have this DNA that they've tracked it all the way back to an Aaron. How Kohanim from all around, Jewish Kohanim from all around the world, all have these same DNA markers, all coming from Avram. A good friend of mine, he was a Kohen. His brother was not a Kohen, and it was all from the same parents. Talking about confusion, right? His father was a Kohen, of course, and he was born. His parents got divorced, and then the parents got remarried. Now, a Kohen can't marry a divorcee, even if it's his own divorcee that he divorced. See, he was a Kohen. His younger brothers did not have the status of Kohanim. But here we're talking about a spiritual DNA that's located in our souls, which we received from Avram Avinu. Shemasar nafsho la'amod b'nisayon lech lecha. Oh, happens to be this week's parsha. Isn't that interesting? We'll discuss more of that on Shabbos, right? But Avraham, when he had that nisayon, that challenge of lech lecha, go away from your land, your birthplace, your father's house, to the land that I will show you, which of course was the land of Canaan, the land of Israel. So when Avraham was willing to do that and to overcome that test, that implanted in him this connection to the land of Israel, and that is something that we each inherited. That is a part of who we are. And those who convert, so they are closer spiritual offspring to Avraham than people who were born Jewish. I'm an offspring of Avraham 30, 40 generations at this point. But a person who converts is a ben or a bat of Avraham, a son or a daughter directly of Avraham. So Rav Dessler writes, the reason why we have stayed so connected to this land is because the holiness of God that is in that land is also a kedusha, a holiness that is found within us, as the descendants of Abraham. And to this day, of course, when we go to Israel, one of the first places that we try to go to is to the Kotel HaMa'aravi, the Western Wall, the last remaining, one of the outer walls of the Beit HaMikdash, of the temple, right? Of course, now everything's become politicized, and whatever ridiculous claims the Palestinians make, right? We're used to that already. But I have a copy of the Waqf, which is the Islamic group that's in charge, and from the 1940s or 50s, right? Their informational pamphlet about the Kotel was that, of course, this is the place where the first temple stood, built by Solomon, that was destroyed then by the Babylonians, and then built again Ezra and Nehemiah, and then destroyed by the Romans. And Islam, with their view that they are religion 2.0, so they have no problem. They have no problem building their mosques on the destroyed sites of either synagogues or churches, because they are 2.0, the same way that we have no problem getting rid of our floppy disks, because who needs a floppy disk? That's how they look at it. Of course, that's not how we look at it. But before it was politicized, there was never a question in the Islamic world, besides everyone else in the world, that that's the place where the temple stood. And the Medrash says, source number 2, Amar Rabbi Acha la'olam ein hashchina zaza Mikotel HaMa'aravi. The Shechina, the divine presence, will never leave from that western wall. Shenemar hineze medaleg achar kotleinu. That's in Shir Hashirim. Behold, it stands behind kotleinu, our wall, our kotel. And source number 3, the Siftei Chaim, Chaim Freelander. The Shechina is most revealed in the land of Israel, right? He's quoting from Dat Tvunot of the Ramchal, and he says, Or HaShechina B'tikuno, hu mimakom kvoda ba'atzilut ad Eretz Yisrael. The light of the Shechina, it resounds. It is the light of the Shechina that it goes from Atzilut. Atzilut is a Kabbalistic term of the highest world, which is a completely spiritual world, from there all the way down until the land of Israel. I've shared before the way one of my rabbis had put it. We're familiar with the concept of an embassy. An embassy is land belonging to a foreign country that's sitting in Washington, D.C., because the French embassy sitting in D.C. and the U.S. embassy sitting in Paris is considered to be sovereign land of the other country that is transplanted into that other land. And it was described that Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, is the Olam Haba. It's the God embassy, that it is different land. And that's why it has, in fact, very different status. Many mitzvot apply only to the land of Israel. It's not from this earth. It's not from this planet. It is a transplant that comes there. And he writes, the place for this revelation of the light of the Shekhinah in its complete form is in the land of Israel. The root of the revelation comes from a high spiritual level, and the effect of this revelation is manifested in the land of Israel. And it's in Israel that when we go there, we feel different. And there's a connection that we feel that one is very, very hard to feel differently. And I myself, when I went to Israel to study post high school, that had a profound effect on myself and in the direction that I chose. There's no way I would be a rabbi. I don't know if I'd be observant, but there's no way I'd be a rabbi if I hadn't gone and spent that time there in Israel. And I would see the profound effect of the many years that I spent teaching at that school where I had been a student, and seeing the profound effect that it has. It's only there. It is only there. Yeah.
Rabbi, if the land of Israel is God's, then those who attack the land of Israel are attacking God himself.
Yeah. Yeah, we do view that, right? We view the enemies of Israel as those who have chosen to become the enemies of God. Yeah. Yeah. That's how we look at it. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, in the Sefer Al-Kuzari, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi famously wrote that I am in the West, but my heart, libi, b'mizrach, my heart is there in the East. Right? And he points out, Gama datot shebo acharechem, the religions that came afterwards, im heim modot be'emet ve'ena makishin ota, miachasot yitron l'makom ahu. Right? They, when they acknowledge the truth and do not deny it, then they attribute great virtue to this place, the land of Israel. Makom helot nevi'im v'shar shamayim u'makom hamishpat hacharutz. This is the place of the ascendancy of prophecy, gateway of heaven, and a place of justice. Right? Jerusalem, our holy city, is considered to be holy by all three of these religions. Judaism and Christianity, right? Mecca is just a sandlot. It has no importance to us whatsoever. To Judaism and Islam, Bethlehem is a city, has no spiritual religious significance to us. Jerusalem, our holy city, is holy to all of to each of these three major religions. And there is a practical consequence, effect of this. And that is source number 5. Eretz, from Devarim, Deuteronomy. Eretz asher Hashem Elokecha doresh ota. It is the land that God constantly scrutinizes. Tamid einei Hashem Elokecha ba. The eyes of the Lord your God are always upon it. Me reshit hashana va'ad acharit hashana. From the beginning of the year until the end of the year. Of course, we don't view God as having any corporal reality. The eyes of God means his focus. It's always when something is when I'm keeping my eye on it. What does that mean? I'm constantly watching it, and I am supervising and orchestrating that which takes place. As a result of this, the concept of hashgacha pratit. Hashgacha pratit. Hashgacha is God's supervision, God's orchestration. Hashgacha pratit means individualized supervision, right? There are certain things where there is hashgacha klalit, a generalized supervision, and that will be, let's say, on the animal kingdom, right? Hasidic view takes it a little bit differently, but the way the Ramchal takes it is that there is not any individualized God's orchestration that if I'm bouncing a basketball, which ant might get crushed by that basketball and which one escaped by the skin of its antenna and didn't get crushed. Rather, there is this hashgacha klalit, this generalized hashgacha supervision that as long as we need ants in the world, there will be ants in the world, but this ant, as opposed to that ant, that is not under God's scrutiny and direct impact. When it comes to human beings, there is this hashgacha pratit. over all that is going on with us. Yes, Reb Shlomo. Oh, yes, right. I mentioned before, Hasidic view, right, takes it further than that. I think in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, right, which leaf will fall off the tree and which one will remain on the tree. That's all part of the divine orchestration.
And there's insurance.
Right? I'm sorry?
And there's insurance.
Okay, Doc. Okay, and that's why this idea of Hashgacha Pratis is that much more easily seen when we are in Israel. And once again, the Siftei Chaim Friedlander writes, it is true, number 6, it is true that the eyes of God are focused on the entire world. Nevertheless, compared to the rest of the world, we recognize God's personal intervention in everyday affairs, hashgacha pratit, in a more pronounced fashion in the land of Israel. That is what is meant by the pasuk we said before, Einei Hashem Elokecha ba, the eyes of Hashem your God are upon it from the beginning of the year till the end of the year. Zohi Segulat Eretz Yisrael. This is one of the special qualities of the land of Israel. Shenotenet et ha'efsharut shel kiruv yitera el HaKadosh Baruch. It gives the opportunity of unequaled closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to God. Umelamedet hashgacha pratit. And it teaches us, it serves as case study, after case study of this idea of hashgacha pratis, of God's individualized intervention, orchestration. Mitam zeh, rak pe'eretz Yisrael, shore hanavua. Fascinating. For this reason, only in Israel is it possible to have nevuah, to have prophecy. Now, you might push back on that. Have we seen prophecy outside of the land of Israel?
Yeah.
Where? When?
A long time ago.
A long time ago. But let's see more specific instances, though. Huh? Yonah had prophecy outside the land of Israel. Right? How about Moshe? Right? There'll never be a prophet like Moshe. Again, Moshe never made it in to the land of Israel. Right? Sorry? Abraham, this week's parsha. Lech Lecha, that was a prophecy that he had to go to Israel. He was not yet in Israel. So let's understand this. Let's look at number 7. Ramban. Sorry? Mashiach. Yeah, where will he? Well, we don't quite know where he'll be starting, right? We don't know where he'll be starting, but yeah, that's a possibility, right? The Ramban in Devarim says, Navi mekir b'cha me'achicha kamoni, a prophet from your midst, from your brethren, kamoni, like me. Moshe says God will appoint. Tam mikir b'cha, from your midst. What does that mean? She'ein nevuah ella be'eretz Yisrael. The Ramban says that's referring to where will it take place? It'll take place in the land of Israel. Let's go a little further. Right? Rabbi Yehuda Levi, once again, number 7, and we turn the page in the Kuzari. Right? The Sefer Kuzari is a fascinating sefer. It was written as a debate. The king of Kuzars had a dream that they were not following the proper path towards spirituality. And the Sefer Kuzari is the arguments that were put before this king of Kuzars by a Jewish wise person, someone advocating for Islam, and someone advocating for Christianity. Anyone who had prophecy only had it inside of the land of Israel or for the sake of Israel. Either had it in Israel or for the sake of Israel. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, number 8. Since prophecy requires the highest degree of sanctification, it can only be attained in the land of Israel, which is the Holy Land. It is thus written, God your Lord will raise up a prophet in your midst, and that we saw the Ramban a moment ago. This implies that prophecy would only take place in the land of Israel when it is settled by the Israelites. A prophet can therefore only obtain his first revelation in the Holy Land. However, he can later obtain a vision even in other lands, provided that it is absolutely necessary for the sake of Israel. This began, we're asking about Moshe, this began once we entered the land of Israel. That became the case. Even in such case, however, the vision can only be obtained in a secluded place, such as in a valley or near a river, which is not contaminated by the general populace. Moreover, this is fascinating what he says now. Prophecy can only exist in the Holy Land when it is inhabited by the majority of Israelites in the world. Therefore, when Ezra returned for the Second Commonwealth, was returning from the Babylonian exile to go back to Israel, when the majority of Israelites refused to return to the Holy Land in the time of Ezra, at that point, the land ceased to have its special status with respect to prophecy, and prophecy ceased to exist. Okay, so we know that the close of prophecy was at the time of the rebuilding of the second temple. That was the last of the prophets were Hananiah, Mishael, the Azariah. They're the last three in the book of prophets. And right now, Daniel, right, those who are doing the Nachyomi, we're learning Daniel now. Daniel was not considered to be a Navi because a Navi is someone who is given a mission, given a message to share with others. Daniel had prophetic dreams and was able to interpret the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, the dream of Belshazzar, well, actually the handwriting on the wall of Belshazzar, and the dream of Daryavesh, right? But that was not go tell the children of Israel whatever message that would be. Yes, Esther Shulamit.
So when it's used in this instance of prophecy, talking about foretelling something about the Jewish people and Israel, I mean, when you use the word prophecy.
So prophecy is God imparting a message to someone for them to share with others. It could be about the future, right? It could be a message about the present behavior and how it's being viewed in the heavens, right? When we go through the books of the prophets, right? Isaiah, Yeshayahu, Yechezkel, Yirmiyahu, right? Some of them are futuristic messianic prophecies, and some of them are not. Some of them are simply messages to tell them in the here and now. Okay?
Janet.
Yes, Janet.
So the Kohen Gadol and the Umim and the Tumim, I understand that those Kohanim aren't prophets, but when they go to ask the question and they have to have special grace or connectedness in order to interpret the Umim and the Tumim correctly, isn't that at least prophetic?
It's not necessarily prophecy. That is a delivery of a scrambled note. Right? Prophecy is that my mind is suddenly filled with this very clear message coming from God. Right? The Urim V'Tumim was, Janet, you're correct, it was a means of God sharing information with us, but it's a different avenue than actual prophecy. Now, we know that the age of prophecy came to an end, and he's explaining at the time that we were returning to the Second Commonwealth, being that the land ceased to have its special status with respect to prophecy, and prophecy ceased to exist. However, it will be restored in the Messianic age, when the majority of Israelites once again live in the Holy Land. I think we've crossed that tipping point. Right? A while ago, we crossed the tipping point that there were more Jews in Israel than there were in any other country. But I believe we've reached that tipping point that there are more Jews in Israel than there are in the rest of the world. I believe we've reached that tipping point, and that is a prerequisite for prophecy returning. Rav Soloveitchik says a very, very beautiful, it brings very, very beautiful connection. It was at this time of the close of prophecy that the men of the Great Assembly, 120 great Torah leaders, including the last of the prophets, including the likes of Mordechai, of Purim fame, that is when they established the davening, the Amidah, and other parts of davening as we know it. So the explanation that I've normally shared is that until then, when there was prophecy, if the prophets are over here, then everyone else is over here. And we were able to, on our own, to compose, I should say, meaningful tefillot. Once there's no longer prophecy, then we've all dropped down. And at a point that we can no longer compose our own meaningful tefillot. And that is why at that point we needed them to compose for us the tefillot, the prayers that we have. And as the Neresh HaChaim explains, those tefillot contain what each generation needs from that time all the way until the time of the Mashiach. However, Rav Soloveitchik has an additional insight on this. Prophecy was this communication from God to us. And once that mode of direct communication was coming to an end, we said, well, if you're not going to be able to speak to us, we're not going to stop speaking to you. And therefore, we refuse to have this connection severed. And therefore, 3 times a day, we'll be speaking to you. And that he beautifully connects the end of prophecy to the start of more formalized 3 times a day tefillah that we say. So this gives us a sense of what it is that we have, what it is that we are all devoted to and ready to fight for, right, even till the end.
So tefillah would be both for the carbonot, in the cases where there are carbon, and also for
there was always tefillah, Janet. Even when we had carbonot, there was always tefillah. There wasn't a formalized tefillah necessarily, but there was always tefillah. Tefillah is its own standalone mitzvah. The connection of tefillah to carbonot is once it was formalized, then the timing for each of these tefillot align with the timing of the different sacrifices that were brought daily in the temple. But we're taught that Abraham established the morning tefillah. Vayashkem Avram baboker el makom asher amad sham. Avram got up early in the morning to the place where he had stood, amad, amidah, that was his tefillah. And Yitzchak went out, lasuach basadeh lifnot erev. Isaac, Yitzchak established mincha, afternoon. It says he went out to speak in the fields, lifnot erev, as it was towards evening, that's mincha, the afternoon, and Yaakov had his vision, had that dream of the ladder, and that happened at night. Vayalen Sham, and he's right, that's where he was. Yaakov established Arvit, the nighttime tefillah. And they say that Yosef is a term of adding on. Musaf is connected to Yosef. Let's see a few more sources on the time that we are living in now, that we hope and pray will reach its apex, will reach its complete fulfillment. Vishav Hashem Elokecha et Shavutcha. We had this the last week or 2 weeks ago. The pasuk in Devarim says, God Vishav, God will return you from your captivity. But Hebrew speakers who have a nuanced understanding of Hebrew, it doesn't. That would be Veheshiv is my acting on someone else. If I'm bringing you back, it's Veheshiv. If I'm returning, then it's Vishav. If I bring you back, it's Veheshiv. If I myself am returning, then it is Vishav. And by saying Hashem will shav et shavutcha, your remnant from captivity, it's saying that not only will he bring you back, but he himself will be returning. Meaning this idea that God himself, Imo anochi b'tzara, when we are in such a state, God is there along with us. V'richamech, and have compassion, v'shav v'kibetzcha, and he'll gather you, mikol ha'amim, from all the nations, that God had scattered you to there. If you will be scattered to the edges of the heavens. Misham yikabetzcha Hashem Elokecha. From there God will gather you. Umisham yikachecha. From there he will take you. V'aviach Hashem Elokecha la'aretz, and God will bring you to the land asher yarshu avotecha, that your fathers inherited. Right? That's the change that I made from the unfortunate translation in the Sidurim that we have, which has later become a very politicized term, occupied. Right? But actually the term is Yerusha. What's a Yerusha? An inheritance that you inherited. You will acquire it and make it more prosperous and more numerous than your fathers. That is Devarim, Yecheskel, and the prophets now, Ezekiel. Lachein Amar, Ko Amar Hashem Elokim, V'kibatzti etchem min amim. I will assemble you, gather you from the nations. V'asafti etchem min aratzot. Gather you in from all the lands. Asher nafsotem b'hem, that you've been scattered there. V'natati lachem, and I will give to you et admat Yisroel, the land of Israel. And in our Amidah, we mentioned Avraham, the Malkom Asher Amad Sham, the place where he stood. That is our Amidah tefillah. We say 3 times a day, Tikah b'shofar gadol l'cherutenu. Sound that great shofar for our freedom. V'sanes l'kadbeitz galiotenu. Raise the banner to gather all of our exiles. V'kabitzenu yachad, and gather us together. Me arba kanfot haaretz, from the 4 corners of the earth. You know, it's interesting. It was a different generation. My father, used to call tzitzis arba kanfos. Yeah, it's not right now. We don't really refer to it like that anymore. But the tzitzit, the 4-cornered garment, they would refer to it as, right? Are you wearing your arba kanfos? Right, right. From the arba kanfot haaretz, from the 4 corners of the earth. Baruch atah Hashem. Blessed are you, God, mikadetz lidchei amo Yisroel, who gathers in the dispersed of his people Israel. And when we're making these brachot, these blessings in our Amidah, there is a double intention that we have when we make this bracha. Meaning, for each of these brachot, we are accepting, yes, God, you are the one who gathers in the dispersed of Israel, and that is coupled with a plea, with a supplication. You are the one who gathers in the scattered of Israel. God, gather in the scattered of Israel. Each of the middle brachot have that duality to it, right? You're the one who's chonein dat, who grants wisdom. Grant us wisdom. That's what each of those brachot, the middle brachot and the Amidah, have that duality. And when we answer Amen to all of those, to each of those brachot, our Amen should be, yes, it is true, and let it be. Let it happen. Let it come about. Yes, God, you, Amen, Emunah, faith, belief, acceptance. You are the one who gathers the scattered of Israel. God, gather the scattered of Israel. That's what we need to have in mind when we make all those brachot and when we answer Amen to those brachot. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, number 12. One of the most important traditions regarding the Messianic era concerns the ingathering of the diaspora and the resettlement of the land of Israel. There are numerous traditions that the Jewish people begin to return to the land of Israel as a prelude to the Messiah. In order for someone to be the Messiah of Israel, one of the first basics on the list is that they've brought the children of Israel back to the land of Israel, fighting our wars, battles, and the building of the temple. There are numerous traditions that the Jewish people will begin to return to the land of Israel as a prelude to the Messiah. The ingathering will begin with a measure of political independence. That's the Gemara Sanhedrin. And according to some, with the permission of the other nations. Right? I always refer to the UN. What do I say it stands for? Useless nations. Right? But the League of Nations did something of some value, and that was they voted, amazingly, with Russia and the United States on the same side, talking about God's involvement. You say, Leiv Malachim Biyad Hashem. The heart of kings, of rulers, is in the hands of God, right? When that vote went through for the establishment, the partition of Palestine into a Jewish homeland and an Arab homeland. At that point, there was never any talk of they are Palestinians, right? They can't even pronounce the letter Peh, right? They call themselves Palestinians because in their dialect, they don't have the P, they have the B. And if you don't grow up with a certain sound, then you can't, it's very, very hard to make that sound. When I was in high school, there were a number of Russians who were in my high school. They were actually Georgians, not from Atlanta, but from Georgia. The Ashvilis, Koziashvili, Jugashvili, Israelashvili. And for them, they couldn't say the. They would go duh. So one time I very stupidly said to him, said one of the guys, Michael, what's the big deal? Just say the. And he says to me, oh, Eugene, you big shot. Let me hear you say, and they have a letter that's a DG combination. A G. Right? Let's hear you say, yeah. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't say J. You can't say the. I'm sorry. You're right. I was wrong. Right? Yeah. But the Palestinians can't say P. Right? At that point, it was this partition. But of course, an interesting class that maybe we will have is about Nature Karta, and right that extreme sect of Jews, of Hasidic Jews, they are Jews, right? But that extreme sect of Hasidic Jews who were banished by Satmir. Satmir amongst the Hasidim has the most or non-Zionist approach, and they were kicked out of Satmar because of their extreme view. And they're the ones, they're the useful Jewish idiots that the news loves to interview. Israel doesn't represent us, right? If only we would give it all back. If only we would tear down the state, then we'd all be living in peace. And what astounds me is they're still saying that now, post October 7th. I mean, they are the useful idiots that the Goyim and the news stations love to use. But there is scriptural basis for what they say. And therefore, it is important to understand where are they getting it from and how does the other 99% of the Jewish world view the points that they bring. But that's not for now.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Then in that case, would would it have to be every Jew ends up in Israel? I mean, and then there would
I think we
be
need to have majority is what he says.
Okay.
Right?
I mean, for the Messiah.
So only then, yeah. All right. Yeah, so with the permission of other nations, that was the League of Nations that in the late 1940s. As the holiest spot in the land of Israel, Jerusalem is the most important city that must be rebuilt there. There's a tradition that the ingathering of exiles and the rebuilding of Jerusalem will go hand in hand as the two most important preludes to the coming of the Messiah. According to this tradition, first a small percent of the exiles will return to the Holy Land, and then Jerusalem will come under Jewish control, be rebuilt. Only then will the majority of the Jews in the world return to their homeland, as it is thus written in Tehillim, God, Bonei Yerushalayim Hashem, God is rebuilding Jerusalem, and then he will gather in the Kabetz, he will gather in the dispersed of Israel. And as we say, as we sing every time we take out the Torah Shabbos morning, as we conclude the main part of the Haggadah that we say every year, Pesach time, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, L'shana haba Yerushalayim, shine, 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 Yerushalayim, hallelujah. Next year, in the rebuilt Jerusalem, maybe even I'll make it there on Sunday in time. The rebuilt Jerusalem. Bezrat Hashem. Once again, there are two things. If people can write letters for me to deliver, it can be from children, from adults, I'd appreciate it. Also, not this Friday night, next Friday night, we are having a Jewish Unity Shabbat. We're hoping to fill 200 seats for the 200 hostages who are not able to have a Shabbat. And this is part of the Shabbat project, right? Please sign up. There's also going to be a panel after that meal on faith and mental health during times of crisis. It'll be myself, Rabbi Rock, and two mental health professionals will be on that panel. And I think it's a very, very important topic to be airing out at this time. So it's going to be a beautiful communal event. It's so important that we all come together to give each other these when it's proper hugs, otherwise it's virtual hugs, but to all come together during these times and to give strength to one another and to gain strength from one another. So two things, please. I think the registration's got to be in by Monday. Okay. There's also going to be part of that. We're going to have a musical Havdalah, Motzei Shabbos, to regroup afterwards. And it won't be me. There'll be some real musically talented individuals. I'll croak a song or two, but we'll have some real music going on. So please plan to be there, like I said, right? To gain strength, to give strength, Now's the time that Am Yisrael Chai, Im Yisrael Chai. When we're all together, that's when we have that life and we have that vitality. Yes, Janet.
Can we make sure that the announcement is made of everything that's going on with it in Sephardi Minyan?
Yeah.
And also, have we reached out to Shir Malot?
So Shir Malot normally doesn't